362 rejections, each one a perfectly valid reason to quit. Each one a socially acceptable excuse to give up. Each one a permission slip to join the army of people who almost made it, who nearly succeeded, who were this closest to breaking through. But here's the brutal truth about your current situation. It's not happening to you, it's revealing you. Every rejection, every setback, every failure isn't testing your limits. It's exposing your excuses. 362 rejections. Each one delivered with the same polite smile, the same gentle shake of the head, the same careful words crafted to soften the blow. 362 times. Walking back to an empty apartment, searching for a reason to try again. 362 moments when giving up seemed like the only logical choice. But this story isn't about rejection. It's about what happens in moment 363. We're all familiar with rock bottom. Some of us are there right now. Some of us remember it like a scar that never quite faded, and some of us are terrified we're heading there. But here's what nobody tells you about rock bottom. It's not a place, it's a choice. The choice between letting your circumstances define you or letting them refine you. You see, we've been conditioned to believe that comebacks are these glamorous, movie-worthy moments where everything aligns perfectly and victory arrives wrapped in a neat bow. But real comebacks, they're messy, they're painful, they're filled with moments of doubt so deep you can drown in them. And that's exactly what makes them beautiful. When was the last time you looked in the mirror and truly faced the person staring back at you? When was the last time you had that brutal conversation with yourself about where you are versus where you should be? These aren't comfortable questions, but comfort has never been the catalyst for transformation. The most powerful comebacks in history didn't start with a plan. They started with a moment, a single raw moment when someone decided that their current reality was no longer acceptable. Not tomorrow, not next week, not when the timing was right. Right now, in this moment, with whatever resources they had wherever they were. Well, let me ask you something that might make you uncomfortable. What if your rock bottom is actually your foundation? What if every rejection, every failure, every moment of doubt has been preparing you for something bigger than you could imagine? What if the very things that seem to be breaking you are actually breaking you open? This isn't about positive thinking. This isn't about manifesting success or repeating affirmations in the mirror. This is about something far more powerful. The raw, unfiltered truth that your comeback isn't just possible. It's inevitable if you understand one crucial thing. This time, it's personal. When it's personal, you stop looking for external motivation. When it's personal, you stop waiting for perfect conditions. When it's personal, you stop making excuses and start making progress. Because when it's personal, failure isn't just about you anymore. It's about everything and everyone you're meant to impact. Think about the people who are watching you right now, not just your friends and family, but the silent observers of your journey, the ones who see themselves in your struggles, the ones who need you to prove that comebacks are possible, the ones whose own courage will be ignited by your refusal to stay down. But here's where most people get it wrong. They think a comeback is about returning to where they were before. It's not. A real comeback takes you somewhere you've never been. Because this time, you're not the same person who fell. This time, you're not fighting for the same things. This time, it's about something deeper than success or failure. You see, there's a fundamental difference between those who make temporary comebacks and those who transform their entire lives. The first group tries to recreate their past. The second group uses their past as fuel to create something entirely new. They understand that every setback, every failure, every moment of doubt isn't just a chapter in their story. It's a crucial ingredient in their transformation. Consider this comeback story has three elements: a fall that seemed final, a turning point that seemed impossible, and a rise that seemed unlikely. Right now, you might be at any of these stages. You might be lying face down in the arena, tasting dirt and defeat. You might be at that crucial turning point, gathering the courage to try one more time. Or you might be in the early stages of your rise, still unsure if your wings will hold. The beauty of a personal comeback is that it doesn't follow anyone else's timeline. It doesn't need to meet anyone else's expectations. It doesn't need to look like anyone else's journey. Because when it's personal, the only validation you need is the fire burning inside you. Let me share something powerful with you. The moment you decide that your comeback is personal, everything changes. The alarm clock becomes a call to battle, not a burden. The obstacles become opportunities to prove your resolve, not reasons to quit. The doubters become fuel for your fire, not weights on your progress. But there's something even more profound at work here. When your comeback is personal, you stop seeking permission to succeed. You stop waiting for someone to choose you. You stop looking for shortcuts or easy paths. Because when it's personal, you understand that the hard way is the only way that will satisfy the depths of your soul. Think about the stories that move you most deeply. They're not about people who had everything handed to them. They're about people who had every reason to quit but chose to keep going. People who turned their wounds into wisdom, their pain into power, their rejection into redirection. These stories move us because they remind us of a fundamental truth. The size of your comeback will be determined by the extent to which you make it personal. Not ego-driven, not revenge-focused, but deeply, authentically personal. The kind of personal that keeps you working when the cameras are off and no one is watching. The kind of personal that makes you push harder when everyone else thinks you've reached your limit. Here's what most people don't understand about rock bottom. It's not the end of your story. It's the beginning of your truth. When you're there, stripped of all pretense, all illusions, all of the comfortable lies you've been telling yourself, something extraordinary happens. You discover who you really are when everything else is gone. But let's talk about the moment that changes everything. It's not the moment you hit bottom. It's not even the moment you decide to get back up. It's the moment you realize that your comeback isn't just about recovering what you lost. It's about discovering what you're truly capable of becoming. You see, there's a certain kind of strength that can only be forged in the furnace of adversity. It's not the kind of strength you can buy with money, borrow from others, or learn from books. It's the kind of strength that comes from looking your biggest fears in the eye and saying, you don't get to decide my story. Think about the last time life knocked you down so hard you weren't sure you could get up. Remember that feeling in your gut, that mix of humiliation, anger, and fear? Now here's the question that changes everything. What if that moment wasn't your defeat, but your initiation? What if that pain wasn't your punishment, but your preparation? Every great comeback story has a moment of surrender, not surrender to defeat, but surrender to truth. The truth that the old way isn't working, the truth that comfort is the enemy of growth, the truth that everything you want lies on the other side of everything you fear. When you make your comeback personal, something shifts in your DNA. The excuses that used to sound reasonable start to sound hollow. The limitations you used to accept start to feel like prison bars. The dreams you used to call impossible start to feel inevitable. Let me tell you about the 3 stages of a personal comeback. The first stage is awakening when you realize that staying down is more painful than getting up. The second stage is alchemy. When you start turning your pain into power, your failures into fuel, your setbacks into setups. The third stage is ascension. When you realize that you're no longer fighting to get back what you lost, you're fighting to become what you were always meant to be. But here's where it gets interesting. Most people never make it past the first stage because they're waiting for motivation to strike like lightning. They don't understand that. In a personal comeback, motivation isn't the spark that starts the fire. It's the heat that comes from the friction of pushing against your own resistance. Consider this, every time you fall on the past, you've gotten back up. Every time you thought you couldn't go on, you found a way. Every time the world counted you out, something inside you refused to accept that verdict. That's something? That's not just resilience. That's your real self trying to emerge. When your comeback is personal, you stop measuring your progress against others and start measuring it against your potential. Because deep down, you know that your real competition isn't out there. It's the voice inside that says you can't, you shouldn't, you won't. This is where most motivational advice falls short. They tell you to believe in yourself, but they don't tell you what to do when belief feels like a luxury you can't afford. They tell you to never give up, but they don't tell you how to keep going when giving up feels like the only sane choice. They're not built on motivation. They're built on decisions, small daily decisions that seem insignificant in the moment, but compound over time. The decision to get up one more time. The decision to try one more approach. The decision to hold on for one more day. Think about the area of your life where you need a comeback right now. Maybe it's your health. Maybe it's your relationships. Maybe it's your dreams that have been gathering dust while you've been busy surviving instead of thriving. Here's the question that changes everything. What if this isn't just about fixing what's broken? What if this is about discovering what's possible? You see, when you make your comeback personal, you stop looking for shortcuts because you understand that the struggle is not the obstacle. The struggle is the way. Each obstacle you face isn't blocking your path. It is your path. Each setback isn't delaying your comeback. It's preparing you for a comeback bigger than you imagined. But let's talk about something that nobody mentions about comebacks. The lonely moments. The moments when nobody understands why you're pushing so hard. The moments when even your biggest supporters think you should be realistic. The moments when the only thing keeping you going is the fire burning in your soul. These moments are your proving ground. They're the moments that separate those who make temporary changes from those who make permanent transformations. Because when your comeback is personal, you don't need everyone to understand. You don't need everyone to approve. You don't need everyone to believe. You just need to stay true to that voice inside that refuses to settle for less than you're capable of becoming. Consider the power of this truth. Your comeback isn't just changing your circumstances, it's changing your identity. Every time you choose discipline over distraction, growth over comfort, courage over fear, you're not just changing what you do, you're changing who you are. This is where the magic happens, when your actions start aligning with your aspirations, when your habits start reflecting your hopes, when your daily choices start honoring your deepest commitments. Because a personal comeback isn't just about getting back on your feet. It's about rising to a level you've never reached before. Let me share something profound with you. The size of your comeback will be determined by the size of your self-discovery, not your resources, not your connections, not your past achievements, but your willingness to discover who you really are when everything familiar has been stripped away. Think about the stories that move you to tears. They're not about people who had an easy journey. They're about people who had every reason to quit, but found a reason to continue. People who turned their wounds into wisdom, their scars into stars, their trials into triumph. These stories move us because they remind us of what's possible when someone decides that their comeback is personal. The most dangerous moment in any comeback isn't when you're down. It's not when you're struggling. It's not even when you're facing your biggest obstacles. The most dangerous moment is when you start to see progress, because that's when mediocrity tries to seduce you with comfort. There's a war being fought right now in every person attempting a comeback. It's not a war against external circumstances. It's not a war against other people's opinions. It's a war between who you are and who you're capable of becoming. And here's the truth that changes everything. This war is personal. When you truly understand that it's personal, everything shifts. The alarm clock isn't just a sound anymore. It's a call to battle. The obstacles aren't just challenges anymore. They're opportunities to prove your resolve. The doubts aren't just fears anymore. They're fuel for your fire. Let me ask you something that might shake you to your core. What if everything that's happened to you, every setback, every disappointment, every moment of doubt, wasn't happening to you, but happening for you? What if life hasn't been testing your limits, but revealing your possibilities? You see, there's a profound difference between a comeback and a transformation. Comeback suggests returning to where you were. Transformation demands becoming who you were meant to be. When it's personal, you're not fighting to recover your past. You're fighting to create your future. Think about the moments that have defined your life so far. The victories, yes, but more importantly, the defeats. The times when you thought you couldn't go on, but somehow found the strength to take one more step. Those moments weren't just surviving. They were training. Training for this moment right now, when you decide that average is no longer acceptable, is what makes a comeback personal. Is not about proving others wrong anymore. It's about proving yourself right. It's not about getting revenge on those who doubted you. It's about getting aligned with who you truly are. It's not about reaching a destination. It's about becoming the person who deserves to arrive there. Consider this. Every great comeback story has a moment of truth, a moment when the person realizes that they're not just fighting for a goal. They're fighting for their soul. They're not just trying to achieve something. They're trying to become something. This isn't about metrics or milestones anymore. This is about meaning. When your comeback becomes personal, you develop a different relationship with pain. Pain is no longer something to avoid. It's something to embrace, because you understand that pain is not your enemy. Comfort is what kept you settling for less than you're capable of. Comfort is what made you accept mediocrity as your destiny. But here's where it gets interesting. The moment you make it personal, comfort becomes uncomfortable. Settling becomes painful. Mediocrity becomes intolerable. Because when it's personal, you're not just changing your actions, you're changing your standards. Think about the areas in your life where you need a comeback right now. Maybe it's your health, your relationships, your career, your dreams. Now, here's the question that changes everything. What would change if you made it deeply, unshakably personal? Not ego personal, not revenge personal, but soul personal. You see, there's a kind of commitment that goes beyond motivation, beyond discipline, beyond even determination. It's the kind of commitment that comes when you realize that your comeback isn't just about you anymore. It's about everyone who's watching you, learning from you, drawing strength from your example. Let me share something powerful with you. The quality of your comeback will be determined by the quality of your self-talk. Not the pep talks you give yourself in front of the mirror, but the quiet conversations you have with yourself when nobody's watching. The promises you make to yourself and keep even when keeping them hurts. When it's personal, these conversations change. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is this teaching me? You stop saying, I can't handle this, and start saying, this is handling me, shaping me, strengthening me, preparing me. But here's what nobody tells you about personal comebacks. They require you to face the truth about where you are right now, not where you want to be, not where you should be, but where you actually are. Because you can't transform what you don't acknowledge. You can't change what you don't confront. Consider the power of this truth. Your comeback isn't just changing your circumstances, it's changing your character. Every time you choose growth over comfort, courage over fear, discipline over distraction, you're not just changing what you do, you're changing who you are. This is where most people get stuck. They want the results of transformation without the discomfort of change. They want the victory without the battle. They want the triumph without the trial. But when it's personal, you understand that the battle is the blessing. The trial is the treasure. The struggle is the strength. Think about the stories that move you most deeply. They're not about people who had an easy path. They're about people who had every reason to quit, but found a reason to continue. People who turned their pain into power, their wounds into wisdom, their setbacks into setups. These stories move us because they remind us of what's possible when someone decides that their comeback is non-negotiable. Let me ask you something that might change your perspective forever. What if your comeback isn't just about recovering what you lost? What if it's about discovering what you never knew you had? What if every setback hasn't been pushing you back, but pushing you deeper into who you're meant to become? You see, when your comeback is personal, failure loses its power over you. Not because you stop failing, but because you start seeing failure differently. Failure isn't fatal anymore. It's feedback, it's not final, it's fuel. It's not your identity, it's your education. This is where the real transformation begins. When you stop seeing your comeback as a series of actions and start seeing it as a process of becoming. When you understand that every choice, every effort, every moment of perseverance isn't just changing your situation, it's changing your soul. The most profound truth about a personal comeback is it happens first in your mind, then in your actions, and finally in your reality. But there's a gap between each of these stages. A gap that most people never cross because they're waiting for certainty before they commit, waiting for clarity before they begin, waiting for confidence before they act. Is what makes your comeback different when it's personal. You stop waiting for perfect conditions, for someone to believe in you, for the fear to go away. Because when it's personal, you understand that waiting is just another form of quitting. Let me tell you about the three enemies of every great comeback. The first is nostalgia, the tendency to romanticize your past and try to recreate it instead of building something new. The second is comparison, the habit of measuring your chapter 1 against someone else's chapter 20. The third, and most dangerous, is the need for immediate results, the inability to trust the process when the progress isn't visible yet. Think about the last time you tried to make a comeback. Were you fighting these enemies? Were you trying to recreate past glory instead of creating new possibilities? Were you comparing your progress to others instead of competing with your potential? Were you looking for quick wins instead of lasting transformation? You see, when your comeback is personal, these enemies lose their power. Nostalgia can't trap you because you're not trying to go back and you're trying to go beyond. Comparison can't derail you because you're not trying to be better than others. You're trying to be better than your previous self. The need for immediate results can't discourage you because you understand that real transformation is a slow cooking process, not a microwave result. You're considered this truth that changes everything. Your comeback isn't just about what you do. It's about who you become in the process. Every obstacle you face isn't just testing your abilities. It's forging your character. Every setback isn't just challenging your resolve. It's revealing your resilience. But here's where most people get it wrong. They think a comeback is about fixing what's broken. It's not. A real comeback is about breaking free from who you were to become who you're meant to be. It's about using your past not as a blueprint, but as building material for something entirely new. When it's personal, you develop a different relationship with time. You stop being so impatient with the process because you understand that time is not your enemy. It's your ally. Every day isn't just another day of struggle. It's another day of strengthening. Every moment isn't just passing time. It's building momentum. Let me share something powerful with you. The quality of your comeback will be determined by the quality of your questions. Not the questions others ask you, but the questions you ask yourself. Instead of, why is this happening to me? You ask, what is this teaching me? Instead of, how long will this take? You ask, how strong can this make me? Think about the area of your life where you need a comeback right now. Maybe it's your health, your relationships, your career, your dreams. Now ask yourself, what if this challenge isn't just testing your limits, it's expanding them? What if this setback isn't delaying your success? It's preparing you for a level of success you couldn't handle before. You see, there's a certain kind of strength that can only be developed through adversity. It's not the kind of strength you can buy with money, borrow from others, or learn from books. It's the kind of strength that comes from looking your biggest fears in the eye and saying, you don't get to write my story. When your comeback is personal, something shifts in your DNA. The excuses that used to sound reasonable start to sound ridiculous. The limitations you used to accept start to feel like prison bars. The dreams you used to call impossible start to feel inevitable. Because when it's personal, you're not just changing your circumstances, you're changing your identity. Consider the power of this truth. Every great comeback story has moments of doubt, moments of fear, moments when giving up seems like the only logical choice. But what makes these stories great isn't the absence of these moments, it's the decision to keep going despite them. This is where the real transformation happens, not in the moments of victory, but in the moments when victory seems impossible, not in the moments of clarity, but in the moments of confusion, not in the moments of strength, but in the moments when strength seems like a distant memory. Let me ask you something that might change your perspective forever. What if your comeback isn't just about getting back what you lost? What if it's about discovering what you never knew you had? What if every setback hasn't been pushing you back, but pushing you deeper into who you're meant to become? You see, when your comeback is personal, failure loses its power over you, not because you stop failing, but because you start seeing failure differently. Failure isn't fatal anymore. It's feedback. It's not final. It's fuel. It's not your identity. It's your education. This is where most motivational advice falls short. They tell you to believe in yourself, but they don't tell you what to do when belief feels like a luxury you can't afford. They tell you to never give up, but they don't tell you how to keep going when giving up feels like the only sane choice. They're not built on motivation. They're built on decisions. Small, daily decisions that seem insignificant in the moment, but compound over time. The decision to get up one more time. The decision to try one more approach. The decision to hold on for one more day. When it's personal, these decisions become automatic. Not because they're easy, but because the alternative, staying down, giving up, settling for less, becomes impossible to accept. Because when it's personal, you're not just fighting for a goal, you're fighting for your soul. Think about the stories that inspire you most deeply. They're not about people who had an easy journey. They're about people who had every reason to quit, but found a reason to continue. People who turned their wounds into wisdom, their pain into power, their rejection into redirect. These stories inspire us because they remind us of what's possible when someone decides that their comeback is non-negotiable.